Michael Jackson this morning, Leslie, um, or Kirsten, whoever's teeing me up with the music. Love that. Happy Wednesday, everybody. It is already, I think we're almost to the 15th of the month. So, this is a friendly reminder that if you set out to do a certain amount of deals, we are what I would say under 15th protocol. So, if you are missing some deals for next month, or if you were expecting a certain amount of deals for this month, this is your friendly reminder that we are halfway through the month and you need to make some changes in habits if you're not hitting that mark. So just some things to think about. We look at the 15th protocol to see, hey, what do we need to do to double down on to make sure that we're hitting our goals. So just a friendly reminder, we are coming up on the 15th, which is incredibly hard to believe. So, all right, I am going to hit on today is shift, and we are doing a deep dive into creative financing. So I talked about buy downs last week, and I know I talked about long term buy downs and then shorter term buy downs, and how those move the numbers, i.e., how much money upfront or over the life of the loan can we potentially save our sellers or on the loan side, our buyers, and then how can we help market differently for our sellers to get more people into our properties and move the inventory with creative financing. So if we're going to say we have special financing, we need to understand all the different types of creative financing out there. Talked to an attorney yesterday and was racking my brain on how can I simplify this for this group so that we can clearly explain this to the marketplace. Because I think oftentimes as real estate agents or even the consumer, if things are too confusing or too complex, we're not going to use it. And so, how do we tell the consumer, and how do I help teach y'all how to think so that we can make things simpler and then actually execute on that type of creative financing? So, all that to say is, I created a one sheet using chat. And in my brain, I thought, all right, how can I chunk this down? What is a benefit to a seller when using financing, creative financing, i.e., in this case, seller financing? And what is the benefit to a buyer? Like what metrics would need to happen in order for it to benefit a buyer to use seller financing? So then I chunked that down and said, all right, what are some clauses and terms I need to be aware of when working with the seller to protect a seller if seller financing takes place? And then what are some terms or clauses that I need to make myself aware of and the buyer aware of to protect the buyer if I'm representing a buyer in seller financing? Is everybody following me? Hit yes or no in the chat. My goal is, how can I simplify this so y'all have a checklist so you can say, hey, if the seller meets these things or the buyers meets these things, we can marry the two and potentially put a deal together. So I'm going to ask Leslie to share this one sheet, and I'm going to chunk this down. I think this is very clear on how we can explain this to a seller and or a buyer. So if you'll look at the screen, we have seller financing checklist here, and I asked chat to create this for me. I said, all right, if this is going to make sense for a seller, what has to happen? And they said property and financial position for a seller. So if we are circle prospecting and I see that a seller has all the equity and as owns the property free and clear, they may have an interest in potentially doing seller financing. Obviously, they have to want to sell first. The property is free, owned free and clear. They do not need all the cash immediately at closing. And I'm going to talk more about that in a minute. They like the idea of monthly income instead of a lump sum payment at closing, i.e., they want some residuals from the property. They're comfortable earning returns over time, and they want to potentially increase the sales price through flexible terms. And they may want to use their property, i.e., their asset, for interest gain. So if they're charging more in interest to the buyer, they may be able to use that for additional income. So this is a long-term plan for the seller, right? This is a great wealth building plan for the seller over the long term. It's not a cash out right at closing. This is residual monthly payments based on the terms of the agreement and with an increase in interest. And obviously there's some risk involved in that for the seller as well, but it may be a wealth building play for them. It says marketing timing. The property's been on the market longer than expected and they're ready to make a move. Buyer demand is limited due to financing constraints. Interest rates or lending guidelines are restricting buyers at that time, or they want to control their timeline rather than wait for the perfect buyer. Risk and tolerance to the seller. So this is something that we have to look at. What are the risks to the seller? They're not comfortable. They're comfortable acting as a lender with professional documentation. And I'm going to give y'all an example here of this in just a minute. They want a secured lien against the property. Obviously, this would be a first lien against the property because they are now the lender. They would prefer a balloon payment or shorter term loan. So that's something that we would need to make sure that the seller understands. All right, keep going for me. And they want, sorry, go back up. I want protection like a due on sell clause and late fees. A due on sell clauses. So say I'm the seller, I'm doing seller financing. A buyer has purchased the property from me, right? I still have a first lien on the property, and say in 8 years is the term for the balloon payment. Yet the buyer has decided, the new buyer slash seller has decided that they want to sell at the 6-year mark. I have to have a due on sell clause to get that money back and remove that lien. Okay. Tax and wealth strategy for a seller. They may benefit from spreading out capital gains. So this is a strategy for sellers if they own multiple properties and they're going to get hit with capital gains. This could be an option for them. They want predictable income in retirement or semi-retirement, and they use this as a wealth building income strategy. Practical considerations. They need, and I'm going to give y'all an example of this in just a minute. They need, and you need, a title company with an attorney so that you can help have them help you draft this up. And they need to make sure that they're communicating with all parties. And you want the agreement handled professionally and recorded properly. So that's on the sell side. So if it checks these boxes for a seller, and this is a benefit to the seller and they're agreeable to this, this is when we can offer seller financing, right? On the buy side, when would a buyer benefit from seller financing? It says a buyer profile, they're self-employed or have complex income. Their credit score is improving, but not bank ready. They recently changed jobs or income structure, and they're an investor or an entrepreneur. Financing challenges. They do not qualify for traditional financing. Fake documentation requirements are limiting their options. They need flexibility with down payment or underwriting, and the property may not meet lender conditional requirements. So, for a buyer, typical for them, if they're self-employed and they can't get a loan yet, traditional financing yet, if they have credit issues, but they're willing to work on their credit issues, they may be interested in seller financing, right? Or if they've changed jobs. So, or an investor, an entrepreneur, instead of, if they've locked up their capital and they want to purchase additional properties, but cannot obtain a loan the traditional way, this may be an option for them. Obviously, it needs to marry with the fact that the seller has a lot of equity in the house or owns the property outright. Strategy and timeline. They need to be able to refinance in the future so that the seller can get all of the money back and the buyer can essentially remove that lien, and then they would create a new lien with the mortgage company. They can, where did I go over here? Make meaningful down payment. Where did I say? Hold on a second. I'm back at strategy and timeline. Expect income, credit, or equity to improve. They want to purchase now instead of waiting, and they're comfortable with a balloon payment later. So the goal of a buyer obviously is using this as a wealth building tool as well. And they are committed to, if it's a credit issue, they're committed to working on their credit score so that they can then refinance in the future and get a traditional loan on the property. Financial readiness, they can make meaningful down payments. They can afford slightly higher interest rates short term. They understand monthly payment and long-term obligation, and they are prepared. So when you're purchasing a property through seller financing, you as a buyer are going to pay taxes, insurance, and maintenance on the property. Their mindset and their responsibility, they understand seller financing is a real loan. It's not just a handshake. They're comfortable working with attorneys and title companies. Keep going, Leslie, or whomever's scrolling. Nope, sorry, go back. They want flexibility and speed over the lowest possible rate. So, i.e., they are motivated to purchase. I'm not going to go into the terms and protection methods today. I will do this next week. I want everybody to unmute yourself and ask me what questions you have. This is very complex. And yet, if you don't have a baseline of understanding where this would benefit a seller or how this would benefit a buyer, then you are missing out on a creative option. Anybody have specific questions before I go into a situation you also need to be aware of?
Hey,
All right.
Sarah.
Yes,
This is Derek.
Derek.
Would it be beneficial for a buyer? And I have a situation right now where the buyer has been pre-approved, but they're having trouble with down payment assistance. They don't have as much cash on hand that it would take to get into the property in their price range. So would this be something to explore for a situation like that?
You can explore it, but let's put ourselves in the seller's shoes, because the seller on seller financing is going to want more money up front. And why would that be? Anybody? So it's eliminating their risk, right? So they're saying, hey, I want more money up front because I'm now going to spread out my payments on getting my equity, unlocking all of my equity out of my house is going to take me longer to access it because I'm not getting it as a seller at closing in one lump sum. So yes, I don't want to tell you no, Derek. I think we might need to look at some other options for them. Because most sellers are going to want more money up front because it's a riskier road for them because they're not getting traditional financing. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And I know that traditional is, 3.5, and whatever it is. It seems like that would be a negotiable item between the buyer and the seller as well.
Yeah. So I mean, if you have somebody here's the thing. This is what I believe. If you don't ask, you don't get it. So I don't want to tell you no, because you may have a seller that's willing to do it with a little bit less down payment, but they may have another term in there that is going to, it may be a even higher interest rate. I don't know, but you won't know unless you ask, right? I do think a key piece in this for your buyers finding these properties is a highly motivated seller that needs to get to the next location, and they need to have a large amount of equity in their property. Who else? I want to give y'all one other point of information that is critical for you. If you are working with a seller that's willing to do creative financing, and this comes on, this option comes on the table, or you're working with a buyer and they want seller financing, and you go find them a property and a seller that's ready, willing, and able to do it, how you get paid matters. So there's a situation that just happened. This is what an attorney was telling me. It was a seller financing deal, and the agent got cut out at the last minute, i.e., the agent got paid nothing. And it's important to understand that if you're doing seller financing and the seller is not getting a large amount of money, i.e., their entire equity out of their house, then there's not a whole lot of money to pay for real estate fees, i.e., your fees. So you need to structure it. If you're representing the seller, you need to have that conversation with the seller as if you're representing the seller and you're putting this deal together, who is paying your fees? Either the seller is going to pay it, and they can essentially finance that in origination points, and how the term is, because they're the lender at this point. So they may be able to finance it, or may be able to structure it in origination points for the seller side. But you may have to tell the buyer, hey, you're going to have to come out of pocket for my fees because the seller's not getting access to all of their equity at the closing table. But somebody's got to pay for my fees. So this has happened just recently. And one of our attorneys was talking about this, and the agent got cut out because there was nothing in writing that said somebody was getting paid, that i.e. the agent. and the seller didn't have a lot of money because of seller financing. They were obviously spreading that out, and they didn't get that upfront chunk of money like you typically do in a traditional sale. And on the back side, they didn't have the money to pay for the real estate agent as well. So before you put the deal together and you start going through all the terms, you need to make sure you structure it so that you get paid for putting it together. And then you need to get with an attorney and look at all the different clauses for whomever you're representing and making sure that side is protected. Any other thoughts or questions on this? I'm trying to make this as simple as possible. I get it. It's very convoluted. And me not teaching y'all this is me not doing my job. So if you don't understand this as a real estate agent, then we're not offering seller optionality, and we're not offering options for our buyers. So creativity matters, and we need to be solution oriented and not just say, oh, that's a hard deal. I don't understand the different terms and I don't understand how to structure it, so I'm out. So I want to make sure that I'm chunking this down and making it easy for y'all. We can give you these checklists. Linda, we can put this in the Win the Morning email on Friday so that you have that. But hopefully this is helpful. And this is just the start for creative financing. So next week, we're going to look at on the next Wednesday, we're going to still stay on seller financing, but I'm going to talk about the different liability that is held with each party. So the liability that would be held with the seller and things for y'all to pay attention to, and liability and risk that would be held for a buyer with seller financing. So hopefully this was helpful. Y'all let me know if you need anything. Make it a good one. Make it count. Bye, everybody.